Let's hope I don't get a nip slip. I hope I don't get a nip slip. Oh, if I get a nip slip right on the pod. Rankin and Bass is gonna be so mad at me. Alright. I think that's a good angle. Hello and welcome back to Maya's Neighborhood, starring your host and neighbor, me, Maya. Thank you for coming back for yet another episode. This has been a very eventful past couple weeks, not just for myself, but for New York City. We have a brand new mayor. Humanity has won. Mayor Zohran Mamdani has won the mayoral race for New York City. And y'all, it feels good. It feels good. Everything feels good. New York City feels so good right now. It feels like we graduated from Gotham to Townsville from the Powerpuff Girls, where we still have crime, but it is a lot more colorful and bad bitches are out in the streets again. Yes! Yes! Everything feels so good right now. And to top it all off, the Puerto Rican and Dominican Republic baseball teams are going to be having their very first baseball death match tomorrow. You're seeing this from the future, so it already happened and you know the winner, but I do not. For the very first time in New York City, which shocked the fuck out of me. I don't think anyone even realized that it never happened before. Every Puerto Rican and Dominican and Latino in New York City just kind of assumed that it already happened. Because it's like, we're all here. So it's going to be crazy. I just got new furniture, which you may or may not can tell. I only had one episode with the old furniture, so hey. And yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling grown. I'm feeling sexy. I feel like this is the first time that I'm buying furniture, like a full set, with adult money. And yeah, it's so crazy. It's crazy the things that you feel when you start doing adult shit and you're just like, what am I? What am I, my mom? What am I, grown? No. Never. Never. It's so crazy. But yeah, things are looking up right now. Things are looking so up right now. I feel like I'm about to get pregnant. I feel like it's gonna happen. When things go up, bitches get pregnant. And I don't know. It's feeling like that. If it doesn't start this month, if it doesn't happen this month, it's happening in February, when Benito Bad Bunny is in the Super Bowl. Right around Valentine's Day, no less. If you see me carrying a little Scorpio in my arms this time next year, mind your fucking business and just know that I warned you. Anyways, yes, everything is looking so up, and even more so, there was a song that was kind of trending on TikTok last month because this up-and-coming singer, Annabelle Dinda, I really hope I said that right, she had released a song, or like a recording of a song that she had been writing onto TikTok, and it was so powerful and so revolutionary that it really made numbers, and it was trending everywhere. And I remember I saw it around like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, proper TikTok viewing time. And also, I don't know if this happens for anyone else, but I get the most groundbreaking, life-altering TikToks when I am under the influence at 2 or 3 in the morning. And then I wake up the next day and I see them on my camera roll and I'm like, what happened here? And then I rewatch them and understand why. But it always happens. They always catch me during the witching hour. But I was listening to this song and I was like, wow, this is so insane. It is so beautiful. And finally, she released it to Spotify and all the other music listening platforms, I think. I don't know. I only use Spotify, unfortunately. It is called The Hand. And I want to talk about it today. I want to talk about it. I want to talk about what it meant to me and also how it goes into my next rant. So, here we go. So this song, I think resonated with a lot of people because it's very reminiscent to Sailor's Song by Gigi Perez, and kind of when she released that song to TikTok and everyone was like, oh my god, when can I listen to this? And she got really big off of that song. But I feel like this song, The Hand, is a lot more similar to Paris Paloma and Last Dinner Party, both of which I very love. I love female artists that make me feel like a medieval warrior princess, that I'm running around barefoot, and they make me feel like I'm picking up a sword in like a beautiful frilly dress, and I got my ruffles and I'm feeling all badass. I got dirt on my chin, I got scratches. I'm like, yeah, that's how they make me feel. And yeah, I love both of those artists. And also, side tangent, I only like female artists. I feel like I can count the male artists that I like in one hand, really. And I mentioned Bad Bunny. That just goes without saying. Obviously, I'm Puerto Rican and he's our Jesus. And I do recognize that this may be an issue. And I had a really terrible therapist last year that I was talking about this with her, and it came after I was listening to an album from a male artist who is very popular, and I think he's gay, I don't know, but I did not know this at the time, and this album was so whiny and so annoying, and he was talking about love, and I just hated it so much that I turned it off. And I was so angry for like 2 days after. I was so fucking pissed off. I was like, man, sing about love, what the fuck? And this isn't coming from like a woman scorned or anything. I was just so annoyed. And I was talking to my therapist about this because I was like, this isn't okay. And she looked at me. I didn't say that she was a good therapist. I did, in fact, say that she was a bad one. And she looked at me like I was fucking crazy. And this was like, I've told her some crazy shit. And this is the first time that she's looking at me like, huh? Like, a man singing about love and you're like hating on him for it? Like, what the hell? I do recognize that this is an issue. However, I feel like the only men that could sing about love to me is like Nat King Cole and Bruno Mars. Those are the only men that really feel it. I don't even believe it when Bad Bunny sings about love. I'm like, please, come on now. I know you. I know my Rican men. Anyways, Paris Paloma and The Last Dinner Party and Annabelle Dinda now. I feel like they really capture this really... It's not a good feeling, but the feeling of just like the female inferiority. I don't want to say complex, but I mean, for a lack of better term, I guess, that, you know, the women just feel this innate inferiority and it comes from how society views us, treats us, and how we are portrayed in the media as well. Now, Paris Paloma has a very awesome song called Labor, who in which she sings about basically how she's like performing all these tasks and how she's expected to do all of these duties and tasks as a woman for a man. Like, I'm giving up my body for you, like for it to bear your children, and like putting myself through turmoil to make sure that you have a better life, that you get food on the table. Like, what about me? Now, Annabelle Dinda's song is a bit different, but gives off a similar vibe. So the first couple lyrics of the song goes, and she repeats this: every time a guy writes a song, he's a cowboy, a sailor, playing with the world in his palm like the first pioneer. Every time he opens his mouth, it's a loud movie trailer, clipping every image and sound he thinks proves he was here. And she goes through in her chorus, and she does this a couple times, where she goes through a bunch of tropes: a girl, a knight, a typical type, a siren in the water, a scroll, a nod, a message from God, a son, a holy father. Every time a guy writes a song, he's a sailor, a cowboy, holding out the world in his palm like he made it himself. Every time I open my mouth, I think, wow, what a loud noise. Still on the soapbox, just hoping I seem underwhelmed. Now, that's just like the first two verses in the chorus. But it was so strong and profound. And you can imagine me at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I imagine everyone else, like the millions of people that liked and commented, just being like, wow, this is crazy. This says a lot about society, man. But it really does. What really sealed the fate of this song for me, because my biggest special interest is movies, someone had made an edit on TikTok, and I'll link it here. I'm sorry, I don't remember the creator's name at all. But they made this really awesome edit of this song playing and all of the biggest movies ever made that feature men in kind of like the tropes that she's talking about. Even though she's saying every time a guy writes a song, he's a sailor, a cowboy, obviously this is, I feel, that the most applicable to movies, because men write these tales, these songs, these movies and stories of them in these wild and important positions that they've always been allowed to be in. And these are the biggest movies and stories of all time, whereas women don't have that. So the movies in this edit include The Godfather, obviously, Oppenheimer. They even have Joker and The Dark Knight, which I thought was a really awesome distinction, because they are two very different movies, however, featuring one character that many men have grown attached to, unfortunately. And, I don't want to say unfortunately, because I do really love the Joker, and I love him as a villain. I almost said hero, and they're gonna fucking catch that anyways. But I do feel like men have attached themselves to the Joker. Same thing as Bateman from American Psycho, which I think was also in that edit. And they've attached themselves to these characters in a very unhealthy way. But what else is new? Yeah, so this edit has a whole bunch of movies, even The Avengers and Star Wars and The Martian, which I thought was interesting, and pretty much any Indiana Jones, any large movie that you can really think of. You know, westerns and Pirates of the Caribbean for the sailor part. All of these movies feature a character who is typically the main character for this large movie, which a lot of them ended up becoming franchises and large, very important parts of mainstream media, and they're all men. They're all men who ultimately get their happy ending in the end. Yeah, and not, necessarily for some of them, like, obviously Oppenheimer. However, it is the overarching, I don't want to say dilemma, but the overarching thing, for lack of a better word that I can't think of right now, the overarching thing that we see in movies, and that's the biggest issue that we have in Hollywood today, no matter how much they are trying to change that, where it's men are allowed to be these big, amazing characters, but where is that for women? Where is our Godfather? Where is our Star Wars? Honestly, like I don't want to talk about the Disney sequels. Not that I have a beef with them, like so many Star Wars people do, but, and like men, sorry, men, y'all are fucking weird with Star Wars and the sequels. There's like a underlying thing that I want you guys to check out, because the way that men get angry when you bring up the sequels, calm down. Even though we did have Rey in the Star Wars sequels, that was never she was never the first hero. No one is going to replace Luke. And yes, you have Leia, yes, you have Queen Padme, but they're not Luke, and they're not Anakin, and even though they're memorable parts of the sci-fi, zeitgeist, the sci-fi sphere, they're not the main characters. The issue that women have, that I feel like a lot of people don't really understand, is that yes, there are female characters, but there's no female stories. The blockbuster movies that women have, they're never what you think it is. And it's never really something in a positive light. And I was really trying to rack my brain around this last night. And I saw that this the person that made the original edit that I saw had made another edit, because the song goes on for a bit longer, and talks about more how women, and specifically the singer herself, and her trying to be loud without being disruptive. The person who made the original edit had done another edit, basically continuing with the rest of the song, and had added a lot of movies that I honestly forgot about, where men have Oppenheimer, and like the men that attach themselves to Joker and Patrick Bateman. Is that his name? Sorry, I've never seen American Psycho. Not because I'm like an anti-men, whatever. I realized that this podcast so far has been sounding very anti-man. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just speaking. Yeah, so the men that attach themselves to the Joker and to American Psycho, which I acknowledge was directed by a woman, that movie? Yes? Someone correct me. the same people who attach themselves to men who attach themselves to them also kind of have this weird relationship with Oppenheimer. I think it's this whole like internal, like I'm a villain, but I'm a good guy. Please, good guys finish last. That kind of mentality. I don't know. Where men have Oppenheimer, women have Hidden Figures. Hidden Figures is it is a more positive story than Oppenheimer ultimately, because these are the women that helped get the first man into space. However, they were almost completely erased. And the fabulous thing about this movie is that it brought these three beautiful women to light, and it is a fabulous movie. It was not nearly as talked about as Oppenheimer. It feels like with the drama genre, men are able to have these really amazing, fully laid out movies featuring a either flawed character or this like cool, I don't know, just like a cool guy character, or the nerd that gets the girl. They're able to spin these really awesome tales that get so much attention, and it's just like, yeah, like this is it. This is the movie. This is the American movie. And then a female-oriented drama comes out, and yeah, it's spoken about for a bit, but then it ultimately disappears. Like, we're still talking about Godfather, what is it, 50 years later, 40 years later? But who's talking about The Help? And I love The Help. I was honestly thinking about that movie last night when I was trying to think of female adjacent dramas, and The Help is so amazing, but no one talks about it. But like, women don't really have their Godfather equivalent, except in horror movies. And horror movies, which you may have gathered in my conversation with my sister, that is my favorite genre. And it's my favorite genre for a reason. I'm not, talking out of my ass with the shit. I'm not trying to make anyone feel the same way as I do about horror movies and everything, because I understand there is the horror and scary element to it. It is not going to be everyone's cup of tea because they are often very hard to digest. However, the horror genre, I feel, is the only genre of movies that women win. And even if they don't win, at least our internal struggles are spoken about. And in often very interesting and shocking ways. And the issue that I feel like horror specifically faces is that it's not taken seriously. It's not taken as seriously as a drama. Horror is one of the most talked about genres. Multiple horror movies come out every year. However, they aren't taken as seriously as dramas, and I get it, for good reason. There are a lot more really bad horror movies than there are good ones. However, we have to acknowledge the really good, great ones that are there and the message that they're carrying. Last night, I had rewatched The Substance, and this is my second time seeing it. The first time I watched it, it was last year when was it on Tubi? It was on one of those like strange ones, and I was like, oh, like Philo or something. No idea. But I had watched it when it was streaming somewhere with one of my friends, and obviously I thought it was as amazing as everyone else thought it was. when it first came out, and it was very shocking, and I loved it. And I kind of grouped it with the Black Swan for me, where it's one of those movies that you only see once, or at least for me, you only see once, and you remember every single detail about it because you were just that sat. You were that sat, and you were absorbing every single thing, and it was so powerful and so impactful, and it spoke about something that very few movies really talk about. I feel like besides horror, a lot of women's issues and dilemmas get brought up in comedy movies, which I also really love. Comedy is my second favorite genre, and I love it so much. It's very near and dear to me. However, there's, with the substance, the overarching issue um, is the issue of being overlooked and basically getting thrown out once you turn a certain age. And I feel like this issue has been mostly kind of the butt of a joke, like something that you hear in a comedy movie. Getting older, my man isn't looking at me because I got crow's feet. It's kind of one of those things where you joke about it enough that it starts to become true. It gets seeped into reality, and people genuinely start to think that way. And the substance put it in a horror movie that, yeah, you can view it as goofy and campy. However, for the most part, it was a very serious movie, even if you don't think so. I know a lot of people hold issue with how it ends, and this was an issue for me too when I first watched it. I was like, damn, you had this really awesome, pretty serious horror movie, and then this bitch is squirting blood everywhere. They're like pushing her, and they're like, the monster, ugly, and she's squirting blood everywhere, and it's so wild. And I had first taken issue with it because I was like, damn, like it went from like an A movie to a B movie. This is so goofy, silly. But a lot of the people that in my life that I really love and I really value their movie criticism, they felt the same way. And I get it. However, after watching it again last night, and this was a movie originally for me where I didn't think that I would watch it more than once or twice because I love horror movies, but I cannot stomach I cannot stomach freaking body horror like that. Oh my god, watching it again. Thank God I knew what was coming and when, because when she's like injecting that freaking syringe into her back multiple times and she starts festering, it is so painful and so gross. They did such a good job. They did such a good fucking job. Yeah, it is so nasty. However, at the heart of it, it is a body horror, and you never really see women in the body horror genre, and I think that's commentary in itself, in that body horror usually does end in a very sick and stupid way. I watched Frankenhooker for the first time, and wow, it was so good. It was so good. It was so much better than I even thought that it was gonna be. I was really worried that it would view sex workers in a very negative light. Okay, sorry. Let me explain Frankenhooker. because I realize that you might not have seen it yourself. I keep assuming that everyone who watches this is letterboxed. And so basically, Frankenhooker is about this loner scientist who his girlfriend dies, and her body is like blown to bits. And the only thing that was preserved was her head and maybe like a few body parts or whatever. So she's completely blown to smithereens, but he keeps the body parts that he has and concocts a plan to bring her back by collecting the body parts of desirable, beautiful women, in which he does so by finding a whole bunch of sex workers. And I was really afraid that this movie was, going to condone violence against sex workers, but it really wasn't that. I do recommend giving it a watch. And I did not think that this movie was gonna be body horror at all, because I don't really think body horror when I think of Frankenstein. However, it kind of is. But yeah, in the end, it ends in this like kind of campy body horror way that is a little Cronenbergian. If you guys don't know, Cronenberg is like the king of body horror movies. He did The Brood, he did The Fly, with Jeff Goldblum, which you might be familiar with. And what he does is so good and so nasty. But he pretty much, at least in my head, kind of put together the basic footprint of how body horror movies go. And at the end, there's always that campy, like, ugh, gross element, which happened in Frankenhooker, happened in The Fly, and happened in The Substance. And yeah, this is one of the ultimate body horror movies, and so you needed that gross, campy element to it. And ultimately, it is bizarre. It is bizarre. And what is more bizarre than female torment? Why why is it that as women grow older, we are seen as less favorable and less valuable? We're seen as ugly. How can you watch that movie? How can you look at Demi Moore and not think that she is the most gorgeous fucking woman? They are both gorgeous. Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, sorry. They are both so gorgeous. And it is bizarre for you to favor one over the other, favor youth over an older woman. And it is bizarre how we pit these women against each other. It is bizarre how the entertainment industry throws these beautiful women out once they get older. And so, yes, it is bizarre to have a fucking monster squirt her blood all over an audience while she's getting pushed around and bullied. I originally, when I first saw that movie, I said that I would take that part out and then it would be perfect. But no, truly, after giving it a second watch, that was the best way to end it. It truly was. Everything about that movie was so awesome from start to finish. And that just really cemented to me how important horror movies are to women and how women should view them as important. Because even think about Final Girls. There's no Final Boys. Like, sure, there might be, but I can't fucking think of any. Even though, you can't really talk about female empowerment that much now when you're referring to final girls, because yes, they survived and yes, they're fucking badass. However, the focus in all of those slasher movies is always going to be on the killer, on the man. Which again, oh my god. This goes into Oppenheimer and goes into Joker, and what the fuck is this man's name so I could stop calling him Bateman? Okay, I think I was right before. Whatever the fuck I said, Patrick Bateman. It goes into that. It's exactly that, where the focus gets pulled from the girl who survives and wins, and instead now the focus is Jason and Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger and everything. These terrible serial killers, these slasher killers, and they're the ones that get remembered. You can't really bring well, I guess maybe now that Scream is kind of this really big, like, classic slasher, and everyone is so obsessed with Scream. I'm obsessed with it as well. It is one of my favorite horror movies. I love Scream a whole lot. However, that shorty, she survived fucking everything. This poor girl. No one talks about her, but they talk about at least the killers in the first movie. Yeah, Sydney. I know I'm sounding like a really fake fan here, but again, once this camera gets put in my face, every time. And I feel like I've spoken about this dilemma in like the past 2 or 3 episodes, in which I apologize. I'll get over it. Anyways, yeah. As much as I do love horror, and my point does still stand that women are more powerful in horror movies than they are elsewhere. Actually, I kind of have a rebuttal to my own statement later on. I do feel as though you can't really talk about final girls in this conversation because of what I just mentioned. Even though they are typically a teenage girl who is smart or strong enough to evade this strong, powerful killer, they ultimately always get overshadowed. So last month, because I'm filming this in November, so technically 2 months ago, since you're watching this in December, every October I go through and watch a whole bunch of horror movies. I try to challenge myself to watch horror movies that I haven't seen before, and then, I kind of watch movies that I do love. Like, I do have classics that I cycle through every October, and I make sure that I watch. And one of the movies that I hadn't watched before, which is so bizarre to me, and so many people did not believe that I hadn't seen it before, was Jennifer's Body, which is the most, y'all don't know me yet, but the most Maya movie of all time. What? Megan Fox. That movie, like, she's not just so stunningly gorgeous that she makes me speechless every single time, but she is so fucking talented. My sister and I spoke about this because I had actually made her watch it when I went to her house a couple weeks ago, because she hadn't seen it before. I didn't make her watch it. She wanted to watch it. But when that movie came out, I was a kid, so obviously I couldn't watch it. But she was a teenager, and probably like the main demographic for that movie. And it was advertised so poorly. And she was telling me, she was like, this movie, the way that it was advertised, it was just kind of like, oh, Megan Fox is so hot. come watch this scary movie. And so obviously she she didn't want to watch it, and a lot of people didn't, and it was panned at first. But now so many people have this newfound appreciation for this movie, and I'm so happy that I watched it now. I watched it now as an adult with fresh eyes, because I knew if I watched this movie as a teenager, I would have hated it. Like all girls go through that woman hating phase, and it's just one of those movies where you're just like, yeah, I would have hated this when I was a woman hater. But now I love women. And I really love this movie. And it really had me thinking about Carrie. And Carrie was another movie that I had watched again that month. And it had been years since I watched the original Carrie. And one, it is so fucking good. So much better than I remember it being. And two, that teacher was yoking them kids up. She was beating the fuck out of those kids. Side tangent. Teachers used to beat the shit out of their students, or at least spank them. I don't really know. I wasn't there at the time, but I hear stories. That teacher was beating the fuck out of every single one of those kids, Carrie's gym teacher. Oh my god. I used to think that woman was awesome, that she, saved Carrie's life and she didn't deserve to die like that. Nah, she low-key did. She beat every single girl you saw on that screen, that teacher had hands for. Bring that back, low-key. Y'all kids is bad. And they need Carrie's gym teacher ASAP. Anyways. Yeah, so Carrie and Jennifer's Body are really beautiful movies in that they're very different from each other, obviously, in terms of tropes. You have Jennifer's Body, which is a siren succubus trope that you don't really see a lot, which I always really appreciate. And then you have Carrie, who is the complete other gamut, where she is telekinetic. Is that it? Okay, yes. She is telekinetic. And where you have Jennifer Check, who she is a seductress, and she is, before she was possessed by a demon, she was a very sexually liberated girl, very open, she curs, she was a popular, really gorgeous girl. And then Carrie was the actual complete opposite, where she was a very sheltered girl who did not recognize her beauty, and she was extremely bullied and was not given the talk at all. She was shocked by her own period. She was bullied to the point where she completely snapped. But at the core, you have this story of two teenage girls who were ultimately wronged. They were wronged for being who they were. Even though Jennifer was a popular girl and she was able to get any guy she wanted, and she was popular, she ultimately fell victim to a really gruesome and terrible death. Because she was beautiful, because she was desirable, and these men preyed on her, and she was, sorry, spoiler alert, murdered. And Carrie was bullied by her classmates, by her mother. And both of these girls did not deserve what happened to them, and they did not deserve their fates in the end. Even Reagan from The Exorcist. I had read the Exorcist book, which is so fantastic, one of the best horror books I've ever read. But the Exorcist book didn't scare me as much as it made me so sad, because like Jennifer Check, like Carrie, an innocent girl falls victim to powers beyond her control. However, Reagan does survive in the end. She survives in the end after Demi sacrifices himself, both in the book and in the movie. So at least she gets a happy ending. However, essentially, what I'm getting at is that, a lot of women love horror movies, and they love these movies in particular. Carrie and Jennifer's Body has gone through such a resurgence, and everyone loves it now, thank God. Truly, truly, truly well deserved. The point of them is the feeling of no control. You are told who you are, and you are being controlled by these outside forces, and you have no power. Being a victim, being taken advantage of, and then you get this amazing power. But for what? It causes death and destruction, and then it's all over in the end. Ultimately, these girls die powerless. But the message of these movies is so impactful. And obviously, the visuals. Come on. The visuals and the surprise of it all. The kind of like, oh my god, she set the fucking school on fire, the prom on fire, all these people are dying, and Jennifer unhinging her jaw to eat a boy. Like a lot of it is very shocking, and that makes you remember it, of course, but the stories are so unique, and they stick with you. They stick with a male audience a lot longer than a movie like The Help and Hidden Figures, which again speaks to the violence of it all, the allure of violence. But it seems to be the only way for us to get our message out and have it be understood. And even if it's not understood, at least it's heard. The song is replaying in my head. It is so good. I really do love it. And dog, it has me contemplating enough for a freaking podcast episode, so good job. I realize I might not have sold the idea of horror being the ultimate female genre with how somber that all came out. However, I do really love it, and it feels like the only way for women to have their inner and outer conflicts understood and put onto screen in a better way than drama. Because ultimately, it is so scary being a woman. It is so horrific. Even though it is beautiful, and I do enjoy being a woman, and it is a very beautiful thing. The conflicts and things that women go through is horrifying. It's scary, both here and throughout the world. And I understand, I recognize the privilege I have as a woman in a first world country saying that. I'm here speaking on a mic in front of a iPad in a beautiful room. I just spoke about how I got this furniture with money that I made myself, and that is such a beautiful, wonderful thing. And I'm so thankful, and I wouldn't trade my life for anything. I'm wearing this cunty ass outfit, and I'm about to go out tonight, and I'm I'm able to wear something like this. And I'm so grateful for that. Tonight, actually, I am watching Frankenstein, which I am so excited about. I could watch it on Netflix. However, support movie theaters, bro. Support movie theaters. We have enough fucking movies coming out on streaming. And, movie theaters are dying. And it's so much fun to go see a movie. If obviously if you're able to afford it, I understand that going to see a movie is so expensive. It is so expensive, so dumb. Sneak your snacks in. Go to the bodega if you have one. Get snacks, sneak them hoes in, and watch the movie. It's a so much better experience than watching something at home, I feel. I think everyone has gotten so comfortable with comfort. Like watching something in the comfort of their house. Go outside. Invite a friend and go to the movies. While Frankenstein is still in theaters, I want to go watch it because I love Guillermo del Toro, one of my favorite directors. I actually just watched Crimson Peak last month, and it was so amazing. It was so amazing and so perfect. I love him so much, and it is such a dream of mine to be in a movie of his, because he just has such a wonderful and beautiful mind, and I know there's truly no... Sorry, there's a fucking fly in here! Yeah! Jesus Christ. There's no one else that I could see doing Frankenstein, and I know that it is going to be amazing. There is no other person in Hollywood. I was low-key against Jacob Elordi's casting because I'm like, oh my god, he's in fucking everything. However, there is no one that tall with that much of a blockhead else in Hollywood to fucking play Frankenstein, and he is a very good actor. So you know what, I am excited to see him as Frankenstein, and him during this press tour. Don't lose my number, Papa. Do not lose my number. This movie is going to be very good. And I had actually just finished reading the book this week, and it was so fantastic. Written by a woman, and you can tell. You can absolutely tell. The very interesting and kind of funny thing about Frankenstein for me is the constant gag-offs. Victor and his creature had a gag-off every time they met, and it was so mother-daughter coded. Hold on, let me get my book and read an excerpt out. I found it. Okay, so in one of their gag-offs, in which what I mean by this is there are moments where Victor Frankenstein and his creature, they meet up at various points. So basically, Victor, when his creature first came to life, he was so shocked by how fuck-ass ugly he was. And so scary. Like, his whole thing was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna create a guy, and it's gonna be pretty awesome. And then he actually does it, and he's like, oh god! Oh god, what the fuck have I done? And so, he flees from his creature, and the creature goes on his own, kind of odyssey. And they meet up at various points, and the creature is obviously very upset because he was given life, and the person that gave him life fucking hates him. And so he's like, what the fuck? And so it gets to a point where they meet up, and Victor is supposed to create a woman for him. That was the creature's like one demand. He was like, please, you made me so fuck ass ugly that everyone hates me, everyone is really scared of me, and I really need a shorty to spend the rest of my life with because I think I deserve that. Which tea? Frankenstein, like, I feel such a maternal feeling towards him, and I feel like a lot of people are kind of feeling the same way now that the Guillermo del Toro movie came out, in that he did not deserve, well, I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know how accurate it is to the book, but he doesn't deserve anything that really happens to him. Like, he was cast out when he was created. He just opened his eyes and his dad was like, oh my god. And like, yeah, he's gonna go out and kill people. You didn't teach him nothing. The fuck. And so Victor Frankenstein was like, oh no, actually I can't create another fugly. Did that fly just fly in front of the camera? Ah! So basically, Victor Frankenstein was like, nah, I can't do this shit again. I cannot create another fugly asshole like you. And so he destroys the woman that he was creating, and the creature saw it and was like, dude, what the fuck? Come on now. And so Victor's like, I'm sorry, bro. I can't create another thing like you. That would haunt my dreams. And so they're fighting. They're going back and forth. If you read Frankenstein, there is no way anyone else could have written this other than a 19-year-old girl. Like, it is so gaggy. It is so gaggy. And so, my new favorite line, I love this so much that I took a picture of it. The creature goes, slave, I before reasoned with you, but you have proved yourself unworthy of my condescension. Remember that I have power. You believe yourself miserable, but I can make you so wretched that the light of day will be hateful to you. You are my creator, but I am your master. Obey. Oh, what? That is one of the gaggiest. I was on the train when I read that, and I was like, excuse me, girl. I was unfamiliar with your game. That is just so fantastic. And yeah, I really hope the movie is as gaggy as the book was. I have a lot of faith in Guillermo. I think that it is going to be amazing. And I'm very excited. And yes, I'm dressed like this to go to the movies. People don't dress up enough. That's another rant for another day. Anyways, I feel like I mentioned something earlier about fantasy and possibly sci-fi, because I do realize that, you know, I'm talking all of this about horror movies, and I'm sure people are probably like, okay, well, what about this movie? It's not a horror movie, but this is just my overview. However, I do feel like the two genres where men and women are evenly matched is fantasy. Because I was thinking about it earlier, and I was like, there's no women fantasy movies, but there is, you know, and I don't see anything wrong with women being princesses. However, women being princess knights is awesome, and a whole other story. We need more of that. I will say that women don't have their Hobbit equivalent, or like Lord of the Rings equivalent, unless, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. I can't really think of anything. However, women get really awesome tropes. Besides being a princess and a queen, you know, you could be a witch, you could be a fairy. I know that's really big with romanticy right now. And you could be a knight. You could be so badass in fantasy. And that's a reason why women love it so much, is because you can melt into this fantasy world where you are powerful. However, like I said, we do need more stories where women are at the forefront. And I feel like Wicked is kind of filling a hole with that, which nothing wrong with that. However, we do need more, and maybe not a musical. Not obviously, I love musicals. I've been in them, and I love Broadway so much. However, um, perhaps we need something as serious as Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And then animation. Animation is another one of my special fun interests. And it is another genre that is not taken as seriously as it should. And actually, in that edit that I spoke about earlier, they had a scene of Miles Morales in Into the Spider-Verse, which, as a Puerto Rican and a mega Spider-Man fan, is a big love of mine. I love that movie so much, and it means a lot to me. Um, I do feel like it does belong in that edit of, men in these very powerful movies where they're allowed to be superheroes and these really big important tropes. However, animation is so equally matched, and is honestly more equally matched than even fantasy itself, because you have movies like the Spider-Verse movies where the main character is a male. However, you have years of Disney making princesses who at first their biggest trait and the biggest and most important thing about them was their kindness and their softness and their femininity, and has now turned into messages of strength. And these princesses, they're like kicking ass and showing that women can be powerful while still allowed to be beautiful, which I think is really great. And then obviously you have movies like even The Nightmare Before Christmas. Jack is the hero in that. Yet then you have Coraline, and not just to have only Disney movies. So everyone can feel represented in animated movies, and that's why I feel like a lot of people do, at least a lot of people in my generation, do lean towards these shows. And you have people that were Adventure Time kids, and then people that were Steven Universe kids, because it extends to TV shows as well. And that's why I feel like you have a lot of people, especially, people like me and my friends that are LGBTQIA+, and you can really see yourself in an animated movie more so than you can in a drama, even in a horror, even in a comedy or anything. Because obviously, as we know, lots of LGBTQIA+ movies don't end well. They don't. And even worse for women who love women. And then you have something really beautiful like Steven Universe, where it's two women coming together to form a bigger, more powerful woman. And it's beautiful. We need a lesbian princess. And then, isn't there like a story with like a prince and a knight who like fall in love? Did that get animated yet? I don't know. There's like a story out there. I'm gonna go find it. Animation does tend to delve into the fantasy genre a lot more, so that does help fantasy a bit when it comes to representation. However, animation is one of my loves. I love it so much, and it is one of those things that is very rare, and it's art. Animation is art. All movies are art. However, Animation does need to be taken a lot more seriously than it is. And I suggest you go and watch an animated movie. Like, not necessarily, a Disney movie like Moana or Tangled or even Snow White or anything. But, I recommend like a Laika movie. Like Kubo, and even Paranorman and Coraline, even a DreamWorks movie. Watch Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I know a lot of people talk about that. However, that movie was excellent. It was so good. Evenly matched in every single subject. It was just so awesome. And it's very interesting to talk about the concept of fear in a children's movie, and the fear of death specifically. Death is the main villain in that movie. And, obviously, children's shows and media, they do touch on the subject of fear, and like the overarching thing is like, face your fears. But Adventure Time had the Lich. What the fuck? Adventure Time is one of my favorite shows of all time. It is very important and special to me, and I love it so much. But they had the Lich. What the fuck? In a kid's show. Like, that's essentially death. Oh my god. So, it's not something that you see often. But when it's done, and it's done right, it is so impactful, and it might go over a kid's head, but it won't go over yours, because you are grown enough to recognize these things and understand them. And a lot of people get so kind of up in arms with movie analysis and takes and stuff like that, and a lot of people are very quick to be like, oh, it's just a movie. However, I do encourage everyone to observe everything and analyze them and think of things critically, because that's art. It's art. It's what you have to do. You can't just look at something and be like, oh, that's that, because then why was it ever made? Everything has an inner meaning to it. Every movie, no matter how bad it is, there's a reason why it was made, and there is an inner message to every single thing. Everything that has ever been created, every art piece came from someone's experiences, came from someone's history and someone's thought process. And everyone thinks so differently because everyone has gone through different things. I have gone through things that are different from you, and you from me. So that's why I love movies, and why I love art and books and everything, because I feel like you can see something and just think about what made this person make this. What made Coralie make the substance? Obviously there's an overarching issue in Hollywood and in society in general. However, what made her see that and feel it so deeply that she created a horror movie on it, and specifically made it body horror, and made it kind of corny and campy, but also so realistic and so serious at the same time. Why did she do that? And books. And speaking of books, kind of going back to my original rant of how women and horror, the horror genre, is so intrinsically linked, I'm looking at my books over there, and I am realizing, it's a lot of male authors. However, there's so many books that feature female protagonists in these horror books. I mean, Carrie was Stephen King's first book. He made his first book about a teenage girl who was so bullied that she took her telekinetic powers and, her prom ended up in a bloodbath. One of my favorite horror authors is Grady Hendrix. Grady Hendrix, I love you. And one of my favorite books of his is My Best Friend's Exorcism. I'm looking at it over there. And I know it sounds so bizarre. It sounds so funny. And then when you look at the cover, it looks like a VHS cover. But it takes place in the 80s, and it features two teenage girls, of course, because being a teenage girl is so scary. But basically, these are two teenage girls that they've been best friends since they were kids, and one of them gets possessed by a demon. And this girl, she's like pretty beautiful and popular, kind of like Jennifer's Body in a way. Actually, thinking about it now, this book kind of does feel like Jennifer's Body, but taking place in the 80s. However, the friendship between these two girls is a lot more of a platonic friendship than Amanda Seyfried and and Megan Fox's characters in Jennifer's Body. That bitch wanted her bad. Amanda Seyfried wanted that bitch bad. Like that. No, they were in love. She was in love with her. That is like a way different ass thing, and makes Jennifer's Body so much sadder. However, My Best Friend's Exorcism is such a beautiful story on the persistence of female friendship, written by a man, which is so weird. However, it is so beautiful and really speaks to the close-knitness and the importance of female friendships, and how that love really does save the day. I really do recommend people read it. It is such a fabulous book. They did attempt to make a movie on Prime, and I saw the trailer, and that trailer was not good, child. Sorry. I will not be in attendance for that. Sorry. I do recommend you read the book, though. It is very good, and hopefully someday they'll make a better movie that does it justice. And all of Grady Hendrix' books, which I don't know if he does this on purpose, but all of his books feature a female main character, which I think is really awesome. Or a group of female characters. His latest one, Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, that's his, obviously, witch story. All of his other stories feature popular horror tropes because he's a horror guy. Not one of my favorite stories of his, however, the impact still stands, and I think it's worth a read. I think it's worth a read. However, My Best Friend's Exorcism is definitely one of his best books, and love him down. Love you, Grady! But it really goes to show that women really are the best choice for a horror movie, in that our stories and our experiences make for really scary stories. And because of the shocking factor of horror movies, it is one of the best ways for us to really get people to understand the things that we go through. And the fantastic thing is that it really is the same for so many other marginalized groups as well, like obviously people of color. I believe the movie Him is coming out soon, which is directed by Jordan Peele, which I'm very excited about because Get Out is another great example of marginalized groups in horror. and how scary it is to be a black person in America, in society. Jordan Peele is just amazing. He's amazing at what he does, cinematography wise, story wise, and impact wise. I love Get Out. I love Us. Fabulous. Another female led horror movie. I'm very excited for him because it's going to be interesting to see a movie that is a horror movie about the pressures that men go through, specifically in sports. So I'm very excited to see how that turns out. I'm sure it's going to be another fabulous movie. And Tariq Withers hit my line. Hit my line. Jacob, I know I was talking about you before. Step aside now. Forget that his name was in my mouth. It is all about you now, Papa. Don't you worry about it. In all seriousness, though, I love movies. I love movies. I love horror movies. And do not get me wrong, I do love drama. I love the drama genre. It's just, I want this to be a call of action to Hollywood to make more female-led dramas that are as impactful as The Godfather, and fantasy movies are as impactful as The Hobbit, because those stories are out there. That's the thing, is that these writers, they are making these stories, but directors, Hollywood, production companies, they're not giving them a chance. But you have to. Oh, you know what's a very good female-led drama? This movie does not get talked about enough. It got buzz for half of the year, and then I do believe that it won some Oscars. I know that it was nominated, but it's 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Please watch that movie. It is so incredible. Frances McDormand is the main character who, come on now. If you don't like Frances, you cannot fuck with me, because I'm not fucking with you. She is just a powerhouse. Such a powerhouse. And that movie is, it definitely, it sticks with you. It sticks with you. And I do recommend that people watch it. And honestly, it really should have as much buzz as The Martian. It's gorgeous. I'm in the mood to watch The Help tonight because, like I said last night, I thought about it when I was racking my brain for female-led dramas, and I love that movie so much. It is so incredible, and it's one of those movies where, it talks about the things that women go through in a very intersectional way, which is very rare. And it talks about the Black woman experience and white woman experience in the 50s or 60s. I think it's the 50s, that movie. But it is so beautiful. And I do recognize that is one of the largest issues that horror faces. And fantasy. Fantasy, it is so... I believe my sister and I spoke about this in our episode, where fantasy movies do not... It is all white in there. It is all white in there. I want more female-led fantasy movies, and I want more Black and people of color in fantasy movies as well, and in horror movies. One of the greatest horror movies of all time is Candyman. And then we just went back to white-ass horror movies. Come on now. Candyman. And that's another movie that I watch every year now in October. it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love it. I have not seen Jordan Peele's, the remake. Um, Maybe I'll add that to my list for viewing in like the next couple weeks and everything, even though we're heading into Christmas. But for me, the horror movie viewing never ends, really. So, and this is what I find really interesting about Guillermo del Toro is that I want more, Latinos in horror movies and in fantasy. Like, what the fuck? What are we doing here? Come on, come on. Like, we have Oscar Isaac as Victor Frankenstein, which is amazing. I love my man. Sorry. He tops Tyreek. He tops Jacob. Sorry. That is my man, my man, my man. And I am very excited to see him as Victor Frankenstein. But we need more of that. And we need more black women in romantic roles and being heroes as well. And we need Latinas in these roles. And we need everybody. We need Asian women of all kinds. Asian horror movies are some of the best in the world, but Hollywood Hollywood needs to get on it. So that's my rant for today. And it might not have made any sense. See, the thing with me is that I'll come up with these scripts in my head, I'll come up with all these ideas in my head, and I'll ruminate them for a week. I'm like coming up with shit in my head, and I'm like, yeah, this is fine. I'm cooking with gas. Whole time it was an electric stove. To sum up today's episode, Annabelle Dinda wrote an amazing song that I will link. I'll link the original TikTok video here somewhere because it is so fantastic and it really, really, really had me thinking for a hot minute. And then I saw that TikTok edit with all of those amazing, incredible movies. These are some of the best movies ever made. However, they do conveniently fit into what she's talking about in this song. You know, unfortunately, women in these movies and in society as a whole are ultimately viewed as Adam's rib. Our job is not to make men better or to complete his story. We are our own story. I feel as though that concept has been best shown in horror movies. And I'm not saying that because they are my weakness, but because it's simply true. And I encourage you to go ahead and watch all of the movies that I mentioned here and to recommend me some movies. Follow me on Letterboxd. That fucking app has ruined my life. I love it so much and I want more friends on it. So go ahead and follow me at the snake. I'll have it linked here or whatever. I realize this sounds so stupid probably to audio listeners on Spotify or wherever you're hearing this. I'm still getting the hang of this, so just bear with me. But thank you so much for coming back to the neighborhood. I love you so much if no one has told you that today. I appreciate you. You are so awesome and you are so special. Thank you so much for tuning in this week, and I will see you again in the neighborhood next week. Hopefully. If I didn't scare you away this time or bore you to death. Thank you so much for coming back to the neighborhood. Love you. Thank you for watching yet another episode of Maya's Neighborhood. If you liked what you saw, please go ahead and follow me at the social media links in the description. Thank you very much. And if you really like this episode, then I will see you again next week. I better. I miss you already. Okay, bye! What the fuck is that man's name? No, 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 no. I am pro gentle parenting. Do not get me wrong. I'm not looking to beat up on kids. However, if you are not teaching your child discipline and they roll up in that school and they start talking to adults and other teachers that way, yeah. Sorry. These teachers need to start yoking these kids up again because the shit that... Talk to a teacher now. Talk to a teacher right the fuck now. And apologize for your kid's behavior. I mean it.